Hi, it's Monica. Welcome back. Episode 2 to my adoption blog, whatever you want to call it. Um, I am going to be going off a script this time. I went back and rewatched the first one, and I can't believe I even got a coherent thought out. I felt like I was kind of jumping all over the place. I'm trying not to squirm as much this time as well. So let's just jump into it, shall we? Um, so I'm just going to go back to the beginning. It's usually a good place to start. Um, so this all happened in the 80s, the 1980s, and times were a lot different back then. We still had a lot of baby boomers, young ones, ruling the world. There was a lot of shame in someone ending up in a situation I got myself into, of being a pregnant teenager. Um, they were still doing very closed adoptions. No one knew about each other. You didn't know where your baby went. You just signed it away and it was gone forever. Um, I knew I didn't want to do that. I couldn't do that. So Catholic Charities told me they would be willing to do an experimental open adoption. I'd only be the second one in the state of New Jersey to ever do it this way with their agency. I had no idea open adoptions in other places meant it really was a lot more open. I thought I was getting a good deal. It turns out the only rights that I had, according to them, was that I got to choose the parents from a couple of portfolios, which I'm sure they had a lot more parents. I'm not sure why I was only allowed to see, I think it was something like 7 portfolios. Um, and then I got to meet them face to face once. And then receive letters until he was 18. So that was considered an open adoption by them. And they even considered it risky. Now looking back, I know that was not even close to what I needed. Not even close. All right. So I met the biological father when I was probably about 12 years old, and we started dating when I was about 14. I had never had a serious boyfriend before. No idea what a healthy relationship looked like. I had no idea what a relationship looked like. I had no real role models. My parents were divorced, and my own father abandoned me when I was 4. So that was pretty much my whole experience with marriage. So, of course, I developed quite the crush on this boy, as girls do at that age. Um, and I have no idea why, but he thought it was a good idea to control me and hit me. And that happened repeatedly, and it happened often. He even pushed me down a flight of stairs once while I was pregnant. I had no idea what exactly was wrong or how to fix it. It was my first boyfriend. I didn't know. And I didn't have the kind of relationship with my mother where I could tell her anything and ask her questions. It just wasn't that way. I just knew it wasn't supposed to be like that. I knew it wasn't, I knew it was wrong, but I didn't know how to fix it. I hoped he would change, of course, and of course he didn't. I knew I needed to break it off with him, and I didn't know how. He forced sex on me before I was ready. You can certainly call it rape if you would like to. It was definitely not consensual. One August day after we had sex, I knew. I just knew something was different. I knew I was pregnant. I don't know how I knew. I just knew. I was absolutely terrified. No idea what to do, how to handle it, who to tell, where to go, nothing. The only thing I was sure of was I didn't want an abortion, and I didn't want to give up my baby. I just didn't know how to pull this off. I was 15. My mother didn't know what to do with me and needed me to leave the house. She never explained. She never discussed why she felt that way. I imagine it was difficult for her, knowing about her upbringing. She certainly didn't have the emotional tools to handle what she was trying to go through as a mother. But I cannot begin to speculate what was going on in her mind. I'm not a mind reader. I don't know. And since she's never talked to me about it, I really don't know. Obviously, my biological father was not an option. By this time in my life, it was already painfully clear he did not want anything to do with me. He had already rejected me the year before when I had wanted to live with him. He didn't want me there. I guess I was in the way of his new wife and child. My grandparents, ironically my father's parents, because my other grandparents were dead, they actually briefly considered taking me in. And like, what a wonderful thing that they even considered it. But you know, they were already old by this time. They were old themselves. They were taking care of my great-grandmother, who was like really ancient. And they had their own medical issues to deal with. I mean, it just would have been so crazy. It would have been way too much for them. So I ended up in a group home, one that was designed specifically for unwed mothers. This was not one of those state-run facilities. This was privately funded. And they were extremely religious. So that meant they got to make up their own rules. They forced every girl in there to attend their church, regardless of their own backgrounds. I went into that home determined to find a way to keep my baby. And I came out of that place with no baby and preparing to sign away my parental rights. They had me so turned around and backwards. And I also didn't see any other way out of that abusive relationship. If I kept that baby, the only place for me to go was back to the biological father. That really didn't seem like a healthy option for the child. They had me so turned around and believing that I was doing the right thing for that baby. And I was actually convinced of this for years. Years. The couple that ran the place thought they knew everything. That's so true. I believe now, looking back, that their mission was to save as many babies from their awful unwed mothers as possible and place those babies into loving Christian homes. No wonder why I have so many issues with religion now. I ignored all my own instincts because of them. My baby boy was born on May 19th, 1985, which today is May 18th, so his birthday is tomorrow. He would have been 36. The adoption papers were signed on July 11th of that same year, 1985. I had no idea I had any rights at all at the time. No one advised me of any. Of course, I didn't have a lawyer. I didn't ask for a single thing during this whole process. Looking back, I realized I should have been thinking of my future too. This was supposed to be the best situation for the baby and for me, right? I should have asked for my college tuition to be covered by the adoptive family. I don't know why no one advised me that I could have asked for this. It seems so insane to me looking back now. I was a 15-year-old kid that no one wanted, living below poverty levels with zero hope. Of improving my life. If I had at least had the option of college, that would have actually made my life better. I was a minor in the eyes of the law, and someone should have been taking care of me. Someone should have been looking out for me. And no one was. It is now painfully clear that the only thing Catholic Charities was interested in me for was my baby. Yeah, anybody who wants to go into the history of it, the Catholic Church and all the baby stealing that they've done since the 1700s or earlier, I don't know. It's been a long time. All the stories from Ireland. Whew, yeah, I'm not even going to get into that. But apparently back in 1985, it was still a thing. After I had my baby, no one, absolutely no one was interested in me. There was no counselor. There was no therapy. There was no one to help guide me through this. I could have made something of myself. I was very smart, but I no longer mattered. They didn't care. I barely finished high school, and not because I wasn't smart, because I was very smart. I was honor roll smart. It was because I was drinking a lot, often. I now know that I was trying to drown out the emotional hell I was in. But back then, I just knew I was having a hard time handling life. Over the years, I worked many dead-end jobs, still believing I did the right thing by that baby. And every single time I felt a twinge of regret for any of it, I smashed it down so hard, called myself selfish, and went on with my awful, dysfunctional life. I waited for 36 years for that baby to look for me. And I was absolutely convinced that whole time I did the right thing. And for anybody who watched episode 1 already knows, I waited 36 years to find out that he died before his 30th birthday. So the last 6 years, I didn't even know. And no one can get a hold of Catholic Charities. I tried. I tried getting hold of the specific social worker who apparently still exists, who is not returning my phone calls, and who hasn't returned my phone calls for many years. So, back to my story. Eventually, I did go on to have a family of my own. I have a lot to say about that. But I'm not going to try and squeeze it all into one video because that would be insane. There's a lot. I will start with this, though. I was treated so badly that first time in the hospital with TJ. I was terrified to ever go through anything like that again. I didn't know it could be different. I just knew that the medical establishment saw me as a stupid kid with no rights, and that's exactly how I was treated. The doctor on call apparently didn't think he needed consent for anything because they induced me with no pain meds and without my consent. I didn't even have the knowledge that they were inducing me. I mean, can you imagine? Anybody who's been through labor, especially with Pitocin, can you imagine that being done to you? And no one even told you that that was happening. It's the first time you're ever giving birth. You think that that's what it's actually like. So I actually married a guy who was supposed to be infertile on purpose because I did not want to become pregnant. And the doctors in his case were also wrong because I ended up having 3 wonderful children who I love so much, and I'm so grateful for them. If I had, gone on and actually did marry somebody who wasn't able to have babies, I wouldn't even know what I was missing. I mean, they're just incredible human beings, and I'm so happy that they exist. So I do have 3 sons now. 2 of them live with me. 1 lives with his dad, but they're all older. They're teenagers. Yeah. And looking back on it, all that I went through in 1985, I had absolutely no idea that it caused severe PTSD. I didn't know that's what I was dealing with. And because I never got therapy afterwards, because I was literally abandoned by Catholic Charities and everyone else, no one explained any of this to me. I know that they didn't know as much about PTSD back then as they do now. I understand that. But nobody explained any of the emotional turmoil and what I would be going through, and nothing, no support, no one to talk to, nothing. So all I can say is that doctor in that hospital the first time was obviously a sadist, and he got away with it. While I was in the hospital, I tried to get as much time as possible with the baby. I knew that I wasn't going to be leaving the hospital with him, so I asked them to bring him in for every single feeding, even the 5 in the morning one. I didn't care. I wanted every single moment I could possibly have with him. It's funny too, because another right that hospitals were starting to do back then was let mothers keep the babies in the room with them. I didn't even know I had that right. No one told me. I kept letting them take him back to the nursery. This was precious little time I had. They're just evil. And at the end of those 3 days, that was it. I found myself back in that group home because my mother wasn't quite ready to take me back yet. Eventually she did, but not immediately. I cried myself to sleep every single night. I didn't understand what I had just been through and what I was about to go through. No support. I really can't go on anymore for this episode. I think I need to close it out. I think that's enough for episode 2 anyway, because this is incredibly emotional and difficult. I really hope that by me talking about this helps someone somewhere along the line, whether you're a pregnant teenager or the biological father of a girl who's pregnant, of the baby, whether you're the parent of a pregnant teen, if you're somebody that doesn't know where to turn, if you're someone that's considering adoption. I don't have anything against adoption. If that's the right choice for you, then that's absolutely what you should do. It was not the right thing for me. And I allowed people to convince me otherwise. And I don't want to see that happen to anyone else. I want everyone to be as informed as possible. And I want you to know that you are so much more capable than you give yourself credit for. Because once you have that child, you're going to do everything in your power to take care of that baby. And if I had realized that back in 1985, I never would have let him go. I did not realize how much strength I had. And there was absolutely nothing about the situation that improved my life or his, because he ended up dead. The whole thing was wrong. And, well, I'm still paying the price for it. And I'm not even allowed to see my grandson or know him